Witch!
He'll be fine. All right. I think we've gone far enough.
Someone explain to me what the hell that thing was.
Before you even get to the main menu of Gord, you'll be treated with a screen including a number of warnings, threatening that the game includes depictions of alcohol, drug use, death, suicide, suffering, physical abuse, violence, including toward children, self-harm, disease, and child sacrifice, among other things. It's quite an extensive trigger resume, and given that one of the earlier scenarios in the game results in a brutal cutscene where a screaming child is eaten by a forest abomination, I would definitely advise you to take the warning into consideration. If horror isn't your jam, neither is Gord. That said, conceptually, I love what's going on here. Gord can be a difficult game to describe, but to the best of my ability, I'd call it a slightly RTS-flavored Frostpunk with sprinkles of The Witcher and The Sims of all things. Despite being a real-time strategy/settlement builder hybrid at its core, Gord also wants to tell you a story. You play as the leader of the Tribe of the Dawn, a tribe that has been forcibly recruited by the emissary of a greedy king to pave his army's way through the forbidden lands of the north, full of barbaric tribes and a variety of creatures inspired by all the darkest bits of Slavic folklore. But before I get into how it plays, just a quick reminder that if you love our content and want to keep supporting honest critique giving a voice to the voiceless, please consider checking out our Patreon in the link below and the cool perks that come with joining it. Back to the game. Practically speaking, your time in Gord will be spent moving from scenario to scenario of the campaign or a procedurally generated custom scenario, each time building up a new settlement, which, who knew it, is called a Gord. Within the settlement, you'll build logging camps, fishing hunts, scout towers, and the like to gather resources and get your tribe prepared to brave the wilds and slay any monstrosities in their path. In each scenario, you'll be given a choice of who to take with you, and you might want to give it a proper think. Unlike most settlement or city builders, the people here are quite complex, with each having a variety of strengths, weaknesses, or skill proclivities like adept gathering, chopping, or combat ability. Then you define the boundaries of your new Gord, build a palisade around it to keep out the monsties, and get everyone to work. As they do, you'll venture out the gates to fish, gather reeds and wood for building, or search the land for supplies, but occasionally they'll run into danger, and that's where some very light real-time strategy combat elements come into play. When your villagers venture out, there's a great deal you can do to improve their odds of success if you can manage to. Some villagers are better suited for combat than others. You'll want to scout to light the way lest your tribe's sanity meter start to drain in the darkness, and you may want to train them with some military weapons to give them a fighting chance. So that's at least the basic gist of it. Gord is trying to juggle a lot of balls at once, and as much as I love balls, this juggler is barely keeping his shit together. I'm a big fan of indie genre mashups. They often end up being some of the most innovative games I ever play and incredibly memorable for it, but it can require some adept hands because when genres clash together, there's always a risk of accidentally highlighting their less than stellar pitfalls, and while Gord sure gives it a good go, some elements of his game design feel like they needed a lot more thought. The central problem here is actually the people. I mentioned there's a sprinkling of The Sims in Gord, but what I neglected to say at the time was it's only the bad parts. Having a settlement builder where you're managing granular aspects of each person including their ongoing skill development, strengths and weaknesses in each trade, gold requirements, equipped items, and any things that impact their sanity level is certainly a novel idea, and maybe it's been done before in a different game I haven't played, but here it is its own layer of micromanagement hell. There's a jankiness to Gord that's hard to describe, especially because it's a game that presents itself quite well, which I'll get to in a bit, but things just never seem to work right. The game constantly yelled at me for leaving one of my workers idle while I'd seemingly assigned them to the fishing hut and thought they would be out, fishing. Then I try to remove them from the fishing hut to give them another task, and okay, the game won't let me unassign jobs. I just have to reassign everybody when I want them to shift roles. Little odd, but fine. Except now it won't let me send this person to the lumber yard, but there are open slots there, so why not? Oh, it actually ended up assigning him, but just didn't show it when I clicked. Maybe this all sounds minor, but before long, it begins to add up. To be clear, the sanity meter does play a role in this madness, but honestly, it's not a fun one. Certain circumstances like darkness sickness, fights with monsters, and hunger will drive down your villagers' sanity, which can be restored in a few ways, such as by hanging out in well-lit areas or drinking some mead. But low sanity makes your villagers disobey your orders and neglect their duties sometimes, so somebody might stand there and starve because they're too lazy to go gather some mushrooms, and eventually let themselves go mad and die from this very laziness. But even if you avoid things like that, there's always too much to keep track of unless you want to play the game constantly pausing and babysitting your villagers like a dad with 10 toddlers who all just learned how to walk. In one scenario, one of my villagers was tasked with gathering reeds around the settlement that could be used for building. Once you assign a villager to a role, they'll automatically go about it, at least in theory. Now, my dear Labushka, the sweet summer child, apparently ran out of reeds to gather in the immediate area and decided to wander deep into the woods where she was attacked by a pack of wolves. I didn't see her wander into the woods, so didn't have a chance to send a scout with her, and she certainly apparently lacked the mental fortitude to figure out that that was a bad idea. I had no clue she was being attacked by a pack of wolves, so I don't actually realize she's almost dead until she's almost dead. And just as I select her and tell her, "Hey stupid, maybe don't fight an entire pack of wolves with your bare hands and run away instead," she passes out and needs somebody to come revive her in less than a minute or she will die. The only villager nearby enough to do anything about it didn't make it in time to save her, but certainly made it in time to get the attention of the wolves and pass out himself. This, ultimately, whether by user error or not, is how I ended up losing a lot of villagers. Thankfully, you only need to get past the current scenario and then you get to choose new ones, but needless to say, the frustration it causes is this: the ability to micromanage all of your villagers' jobs, the items they pick up, their skills, strengths, and weaknesses, and ultimately their fate if they decide to go rogue and do something stupid, directly clashes with any aspect of this feature that could be considered fun. It's impossible to even feel invested in these people since they don't really interact with one another, they have no personalities beyond what's plainly written on their fact sheet, and their version of self-preservation leaves them as little more than demon fodder if you dare look away for long enough to let them accidentally kill themselves. On paper, this genre combo felt like a peanut butter and chocolate victory story, but in execution, it's more like peanut butter and toothpaste. And it's such a shame because, as I alluded to earlier, Gord has a pretty great presentation. The game runs well and comes with a slew of graphics options, including seemingly every AI upscaling solution under the sun, and while nothing about the visuals looks state-of-the-art, the mood set by the howling winds, misty forests, and violently swaying trees in this Slavic nightmare gives the impression of a game that's ready to, well, impress. The music is very good throughout, and there's a bit of voice acting too, whether in the fully rendered cutscenes, the more cartoony, comic-esque sequences looking beautifully inspired by games like Darkest Dungeon, or the voice of the narrator telling you your villager has stopped working again for some reason. The game also has accessibility options for color blindness, font size, and UI scaling, as well as perfect ultra-widescreen support. And you know what? Despite all the criticism I have, I didn't hate it. It was interesting. I liked the narrative focus, the attempt to interweave systems like maintaining a character's sanity into the mix, and the magical incantations that could be used to gain a leg up on your enemies in a tight spot. But overwhelmingly, the dark, foreboding atmosphere is wasted on me because I spent so much time chasing my villagers down that I left the experience mentally exhausted in all the wrong ways. I don't think that paints Gord as an objectively bad game, but it just wasn't the game for me. Those who really like to dive deep into a settlement builder and build a masterfully efficient Gord may really like this unique twist on the genre, but others like myself may not have the patience or sanity for it. Thanks so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and of course consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames.
Our sister was wounded by foe.